Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Pacholczak. I'm the course Deputy Director for Medical Ethics, Law and Humanities postgraduate course. Welcome to today's session. If you have any questions, please feel free to put the questions in the chat. I am going to talk about the course firstly, and then we are going to have time for questions as well. So as I go along, please feel free to put questions in the chat. Okay, so this is a new course. We have run the course for the first time this year. It is embedded, however, in a lot of expertise at the St. George's part of City St. George's University. This is Carwyn Hooper, who is the course director for the course. He's a reader in global health ethics and law, and also the head of the graduate school. So the course is in very, very good hands. We are part of the Institute of Medical and Biomedical Education. And the idea for the course really was there for quite a while. To offer a postgraduate course, we have been offering undergraduate courses for students within the St. George's Medical School and biomedical degree for many years now. And this is really to take advantage of the expertise and also the long history of St. George's as a hospital attached and medical school. So as you can see, the St. George's Hospital was founded in 1733, so a very long history. And in 1752, it started training apprentice doctors. It became a medical school in 1834, and there was a move from central London to Tooting in 1976. The university and now has merged with the City University, which gives additional opportunities for students to take advantage both of the particular expertise within St. George's and the long history of the medical school teaching and expertise related to that, but also offers ability to integrate a little bit more with the city students and take advantage of the resources at both campuses. The Tooting campus has around 3,000 plus students, and because of its location in the same building as St. George's University Hospital, NHS Foundation Trust, we have a very close relationship with our clinical colleagues, and there is, of course, input of expertise from our clinical colleagues as well. It has been a top 200 in the Times Higher Education World University rankings, and being international and open to international perspectives is at the heart of all of our agendas, and it's also visible in optional modules for this course. So there are some modules that are shared with global health, and some modules that are shared with global health and postgraduate degree, and so there's option to take those additional modules if that's your interest and focus. But there are also a host of modules that are specific to medical ethics and focused a little bit more nationally. In terms of the aims of the course, the program will enable students to learn about core ethical and legal concepts, theories, and facts. So those include really those basic concepts in ethics and law that bear on discussions that we currently have around medicine from legal and ethical perspectives. So, for example, you might have seen discussions covered in the media around the assisted dying bill and questions around assisted dying. And so the course also aims to provide methods for systematic analysis and knowledge background that you need to address various medical ethics and law questions. It also aims to empower students to analyze and solve problems in ethical, legal, and social aspects of medicine and biomedical research. We have a big focus on healthcare and medicine, but there is also a dedicated module that focuses on research ethics and law specifically. So for those of you who might be interested in the research side, there is also an opportunity to explore things in more depth, specifically related to research. And really the impetus behind the course is to enable and inspire students to address current societal challenges. And so really to address those ethical issues with a view of making a change in your workplace and in the future. It also aims to provide the foundations for lifetime training and education in medical ethics, law, and the humanities, which can be then used to pursue clinical or not clinical careers in the area. Some of our current students actually come from a clinical background. Others come from other backgrounds, science, graduates of other degrees, those interested in humanities, philosophy, or with particular interest in law. But we also have students that are currently working in the NHS or other clinical settings. So I hope this gives a little bit of a snapshot of the general aims of the program. In terms of the options in terms of taking the course, we do offer a full master's degree, but also there is a possibility of taking some of the modules and achieving postgraduate diploma or postgraduate certificate in medical ethics, law, and humanities. The course is, the duration is 12 months full-time or 24 months part-time. We have both part-time and full-time students currently enrolled on the course. In terms of the requirements for the MA and also for the PG certificate and postgraduate diploma, the MA is made up of 180 credits that can be studied either full-time or part-time. There will be 4 15-credit compulsory modules common to all postgraduate students, which introduce applied reasoning in medical ethics and law. So that's medical ethics and law module, methods in humanities, introduction to medical humanities, and also look firstly at the history and then at the future of medicine and medical ethics. So dedicated modules on history of medicine and future of medicine ethics. We have a very experienced historian running history of medicine, and because St. George's as a medical school also has a long history, it's a very good place to to reflect on the historical context of medicine and also take advantage of the archival and other resources that are available at the Tooting campus. So those are the compulsory modules. In addition, you will be able to choose from a range of optional modules. And when selecting optional modules, you will take, you have to ensure that half of the modules focus primarily on humanities and half focus primarily on ethics and law to get that balance between humanities approaches and ethical and legal approaches. There's also a chance to investigate the topic that you're particularly interested in through undertaking a research project that is linked to one of the themes of the degree. We have a number of different supervisors, so there is scope both to pick up a project that is perhaps a little bit already better shaped or assigned, offered, or to look for supervisors to pursue a particular area of your interest. So this is for the master's degree. To achieve the postgraduate certificate, you would need 60 credits, and so that would include studying the 4 compulsory modules that I mentioned above. For the postgraduate diploma, in addition to compulsory modules, you would choose some additional modules from the available choices up to the value of 60 credits. And again, half of these modules would focus primarily on the humanities and half would focus on ethics and law. So in terms of the compulsory modules, just to give a clear list and a snapshot, and medical ethics and law and introduction to medical humanities are two modules that happen in the first semester. Medical ethics and law is a module that is shared with our undergraduates with an additional 1-hour masterclass just dedicated for postgraduate students. So there's a little bit larger group, which is, I think, actually nice, and then a smaller discussion just for postgraduate students. Introduction to Medical Humanities introduces methods in different disciplines that are included in medical humanities. So that's philosophy, law, consideration of various art forms, literary texts, history, and so on. So this is a methods module that gives you a good background for your research project, as well as introduces to a wider array of different methods. And you can choose which particular approach or method is particularly suitable to investigate the topics that you want, and, for example, pursue that in your research project. In the second semester, we have history of medicine. I mentioned that module before, and future of medicine ethics. This module is actually led by me and focuses on cutting edge problems and technologies that are introduced to enable improvements in medical treatment. So that includes, for example, reflection on the role of genomic medicine in healthcare and medical treatment and biomedical research, and also looks at things like robotics and AI, just to give some examples of sessions. We also have the research project that starts in December with your research proposal due in December, and then initial analysis in semester 2. But the bulk of the work for your research project is actually going to happen over late spring and summer. Okay. And this is a list of the optional modules. So in addition to compulsory modules, you also have a choice of quite a few focused modules. Clinical ethics and law is dedicated to considering ethical and legal questions around particularly clinical practice. There is also research ethics and law module, which focuses on research and research ethics and law. The Global Governance, Ethics and Law is a 30-credit module, so teaching for that module takes place twice a week. For clinical ethics and research ethics, that's once a week. And this particular module is shared with global health students and focuses on global issues around healthcare, particularly from an ethical, governance, and legal perspective. We have also two other modules, Finding a Leg to Stand On and Imagining the Other. And those are modules that focus on humanities approaches. So Finding a Leg to Stand On has been a module that was also previously offered to all the St. George's community and focuses on humanities approaches to the human body. And so quite popular among students that may be a little bit more clinically focused, but want to explore issues around medicine and understanding of our bodies and clinical questions from the more humanities qualitative perspective. Imagining the Other focuses on questions around literary representations and dealing with loss and bereavement, a very interesting module led by a very experienced academic, which has also been offered to a very well established module. Neuroethics focuses on ethical and ethical, philosophical, and legal questions around neuroscience, neurology, and our brain. This is a module led by me. That's a labor of love. I'm a philosophical bioethicist, and my particular interest is in neuroethics, so very much in the area of expertise and interest. It's a 15 credits module that happens in the second semester. And we also have another optional module, Cross-Cultural Mental Health and Humanities. This is a 30 credit module, so the teaching happens twice a week as well. And this module focuses on mental health issues from a humanities perspective, particularly looking at understanding and experience of mental health from various cultural perspectives. A very interesting module led by Dr. Aisha Ahmad, who is actively also involved in research, global health research, particularly around mental health conflict, for example. So using humanities methods to elucidate questions around trauma, mental health from transcultural perspective. There is further information about practicalities, application processes, as well as the course itself available on the Medical Ethics, Law and Humanities website. I encourage you to look at it if you haven't yet. There are also some contacts if you have additional questions. You can also contact us with those questions. How are we doing with time? I think we have a little bit more time. So so let me talk about a few other things before we break and have a chance to talk, and I have a chance to answer your questions. In terms of careers and opportunities for this master's, the Master's in Medical Ethics, Law and Humanities opens up a variety of opportunities. There are opportunities in academic setting, either in terms of pursuing further research and education through a PhD, but also there are opportunities to be involved in one of the or work for one of the organizations that are very much focused on the ethical and legal questions around medicine. So, for example, the Wellcome Trust and the National Council of on Bioethics considers and produces reports on those topics. And there are also opportunities within healthcare setting, either in your current or new job. As I said, we have several students, current students from healthcare and NHS background, and this particular degree helps to further professional development and also prepare for perhaps new roles within the NHS as well. And there are opportunities in science-related jobs, for example, in regulatory or oversight roles to do with clinical trial or other research. Here, the breadth of practical experience and insight and the expertise of our speakers, coupled with the academic, sorry for the typo here, coupled with opportunity to explore particular topics from an academic perspective, can really prepare you to make impactful change in the way that healthcare science is practiced, regulated, and understood by the public. Careers in medical ethics, law, and humanities are often divided into complementing your professional practice in healthcare science, law, policy, or management, academic opportunities, and health and science-related humanities. So those are just some examples of potential career paths and employers here visible on the left. In terms of the skills, this particular degree helps to also develop both disciplinary and wider transferable skills to do with ethical analysis, argumentation, justification, presenting and academic writing. The argumentation and justification that we are going to be talking about is, for example, visible in professional reports and on the introduction of new technologies, for example, as produced by the NAFIL Council on Bioethics. This particular degree also helped to develop critical analysis, academic reading, structuring work, and developing recommendation for practice skills. So this is just an example here of NAFIL Council of Bioethics briefing note, which the production of which relies on the application of similar skills and approaches to problems that we are going to consider in during the degree, just to give an example. Since we have a little bit of time, I will just briefly outline a few modules and the focus on a few modules. But feel free to ask questions also as I go along. As I mentioned, medical ethics and law module focus on ethics and law, particularly around medical practice. It is a very applied look, so looking at the current ethical dilemmas in medical practice and healthcare. From a philosophical, ethical, and legal perspective. So that includes learning about the current law, as well as regulatory and legal and ethical debates about potentially changing the law, or reflecting on the changes that already taken place. So for example, we can look at that application of the Mental Capacity Act, the difference and changes in the understanding of the best interest legal test, or questions around abortion, euthanasia, in vitro fertilization and reproductive technologies, as well as data management, just to give you some example of topics. There is a very much applied focus, so you are going to gain tools that will help you to analyze particular clinical cases and develop your analysis and argument, as well as looking at the legal aspect of practice. Introduction to medical, so this module, medical ethics and law, is actually shared with an undergraduate cohort, a very well established module with both core academic staff from the Tübingen campus and guest speakers coming to talk and teach within their expertise and as well research interest. Introduction to Medical Humanities is a module dedicated just to postgraduate, to this cohort. So it provides a smaller group that helps to focus on developing those method skills that will be useful for the second semester and the research projects. Those include reflection on the philosophical methods that we can apply in this area, literary analysis of illness, medical practice and health, historical methods and view, including reading of historical sources, as well as arts perspectives in exploring aspects of healthcare delivery and illness itself. So one of the lecturers that teaches on teaches about arts perspectives actually collaborated with clinical staff in developing measures of pain using those qualitative and humanities approaches to help patients communicate the nature and severity of pain that could aid them in the clinically addressing of pain. So we are going to both focus from that academic perspective, but also those methods have a very applied component potentially too. And another aspect is looking at patients' narratives to consider patients' perspective of illness and healing, which again can help to both understand patients' view, but also improve practice. History of medicine, as I mentioned, this is a second semester module, focuses on developing a historical perspective on medical practice. There are some really interesting historical aspects when we are looking at the history of transplantation or transfusion. For example, and a history of how mental health has been considered and understood, and the changes in the way medical care is delivered. So some key topics include, for example, the professionalization of medical and healthcare delivery, history of pharmacological remedies, history of women in medicine, and there's some more really interesting topics around mental health, for example. The methods include both looking at primary sources and secondary source analysis. This is led by my colleague, a very experienced historian, and it's really a very interesting and I'm kind of very enthusiastic about this module. And this is Future of Medicine Ethics that I mentioned here in the second semester. After having had experience and practice in analysis of clinical scenario and background in medical ethics and law, we are future looking. So looking at the intersection of medicine and technology, looking at current challenges. So for example, the introduction of artificial intelligence in various aspects of care, but also we are looking a little bit more practically, looking at developing recommendations for future practice and am I back? Okay, I'm very sorry. I think that my internet dropped just for a moment. Thank you for your patience. So I think I was saying that in this particular module, we are focusing both on analysis, but also trying to imagine the future of healthcare and propose some policy solutions and recommendations. So we would look at the various medical technologies, genomics, artificial intelligence, and healthcare robots. And for example, with healthcare robots, reflecting on the current use or post-pandemic use of robots in various roles in healthcare, but also potentially looking at societies and healthcare systems that introduce those technologies to a larger extent. Okay, so I think this perhaps is enough from me. If you have any questions, do let me know, or if I can help in any other way, do let me know.
Yes, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat, and Anna will be able to answer those questions now. She has now finished her presentation, so it's a great time to ask some questions.
Let me perhaps say that currently we have a small cohort of students, around 10. Next year we are expecting a little bit larger cohort, but still a relatively small degree, which is a big advantage because you can have a closer interaction with the staff. We have both home students and also international students on the course, and both part-time and full-time students. Also, majority of teaching happens on site, but for example, or in a blended learning approach. So a majority of classes would be at the Tübingen campus, but History of Medicine is a module that is entirely online. So there is a small aspect of online teaching generally for the course, but History of Medicine is going to be delivered online.
Since there's no questions, I'm just going to prompt some questions on their behalf, just in case people do start to, think of other questions. Is it possible for you to talk about? I'm not sure if there's any specific, I would say, structure to the courses. Are they all similar structures, or structure to the course? Sorry, is there any way that you can just describe the structure? I know we get that question quite a lot, like a structure to how the course runs. Like how would a week run? Like a week of
a week. Okay, so
yeah.
looking at particular modules.
Yeah.
Of course. So for 15 credits modules, we meet once a week. The sessions are either 3 hours or 2 hours. It's 3 hours for medical ethics and law and 2 hours for introduction to medical humanities. We meet, I think, twice or 3 times per week. Generally speaking, some of the modules are on the same day. So for example, if you took medical ethics and law and an optional module in research ethics and law, this is a morning. Medical ethics and law is in the morning, and research ethics and law is in the afternoon. In terms of the structure of the course, we are meeting at the end of September for the first class. There's weekly teaching sessions. Formative assessment is submitted usually mid-module, and so that's an opportunity to do a first bit of writing and receive feedback before your final submissions are due. For introduction of medical humanities, a formative assessment is actually due a little bit later, towards the end of November, end of the module. So midway, we have usually formative assignment, then another 4 or 5 weeks of teaching, and then any chance of either presenting, if that's assessment, if presentations are an assessment, or thinking about your summative assessment. So for example, having conversations about assessment specifically with either the module lead or staff learning support staff that can also help with developing skills such as essay writing or presenting. The summative assessment for many of the modules, if those are presentations, those happen at the end of the module. For written assessment, there's usually at least several weeks, if not longer, to complete the assessment. So for medical ethics and law, for example, the assessment is due early January. So there's quite a lot of time to complete the submission.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, thank you. Is anyone else got any other questions? I have a few questions here that we normally do get via email after each webinar. So there's some questions that we have is also in regards to, I know this is postgraduate, but some people do ask about placements in postgraduate studies.
Okay.
You want to talk about that, please? Yeah. Thank
you. Of course. So as part of this particular course, we do not offer any placements. But if you're interested in organizing something individually and that being, let's say, a part of your research project, you can always discuss that with the course director.
Thank you. And also, people normally do ask also about online learning as well. I know you've already said the course structure, but if you can just go in confirm about online learning.
Of course. Maximum of 20% of learning is going to happen online. For most modules, the teaching and we meet in person, but there are usually 1 or 2 sessions per semester that happen online, and so that enables us also to bring experienced speakers from abroad, for example. So there is an advantage and a little bit of flexibility that is given by that. Just the history of medicine module is going to be designed and happen online. In terms of the course materials, we have a Canvas, which is an online learning environment. So before every sessions, you are going to have access to reading materials and PowerPoint slides and so on. So there is also that online environment that provides some scaffolding, additional information for your learning. So I think we really do utilize Canvas quite a lot in terms of providing the information for the sessions themselves, as well as any follow-up or additional materials and reading.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anna, for today. I can't see any questions at the moment. We do have a few minutes left. If anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in there now. Or Anna, is there a specific email address that people can contact you or your team on? It would be great to put that on the screen for them so they'll be able to take
Yes,
that down.
sure.
Okay. I have also put the admissions emails on this in the chat for anybody that would like to know more in regards to the admissions. If you have any questions, sorry, for admissions, you can contact them via that email address. And Anna will probably put also another contact in there as well, so you can contact the team directly. Okay, so I can see that there's no questions. So thank you everyone for coming today. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Anna, before this session ends?
No, thank you very much for coming. If you have any questions, really do get in touch and contact either myself or Carwyn Hooper, who is the course director. And you can also contact admissions team if you have any questions around deadlines and admissions, deadlines for the scholarship, and so on.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.